Hello, Marissa.
Oh, where are you connecting from today?
Wow, Hawaii, New Zealand, Germany, India.
Hello, New Zealand.
Hey!
Hello, Deutschland. Hello, Rwanda. Hello, India.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
Hello everyone.
Okay, maybe let's start, guys. So, yeah. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for making time for the meetup. So, I'm Roy Juton, and with the other members of the Agile Mauritius group, that is, we have Jeremy Flo, Danusha Gokul, Actor Jaman, and Harold Campbell. So, we would like to thank you very much for joining this meetup. And today we are very pleased to welcome our speaker, Joe Justice, who will be talking about Agile at Tesla. So what he has learned working for Elon Musk. So we'll explore what is similar, what is different between Musk Agile and anything else, and what Joe has ever seen using a question and answer discussion. So a quick bio of Joe. And also, as you may have read it on our various channels, so Joe is a TED.com speaker, a guest lecturer at MIT and Oxford University. He featured in Forbes 5 times to date, including as owner of a company to watch by Forbes Billionaire Club. He is cited in more than 8 business paperbacks and hardcovers, the subject of a Discovery Channel documentary for his work, creating the disciplines, extreme manufacturing, Scrum Hardware, and the Justice Method. And finally, Joe also founded WIKISPEED and operated Agile at Tesla from Tesla's Fremont, California global headquarters. And so before we proceed, some quick guidelines. So please ensure your mic is on mute during the session. And you can post your question on slido.com, hashtag AgileMRU. And finally, please note that this session will be recorded. So without further ado, I hand over to Joe to take over from here. Thank you, Joe.
Roy, thank you so much. And thank you, Agile Mauritius, for building this community and inviting people from all over the world to enjoy part of this session today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope this session becomes conversational. I'll try to introduce some, I hope, interesting information, and then I hope the comments drive the conversation after that point. So please don't be shy. Please engage if you want to. I'll try sharing my screen. Does anyone see a big gray arrow?
Yes.
Okay, okay, success, success. This morning, I was lucky enough to be a special lecturer at Harvard for the third time. My third time as a special lecturer remote to Harvard. And what I'd like to share with Agile Mauritius is some of what I shared the project management course at Harvard this morning. So in a way, welcome to Harvard Extension. What I'm going to try to show is speed of innovation. And what I believe makes that climb, makes that go up, the speed of innovation in these companies. At the very bottom left, I've put traditional project management, which some of us call waterfall. Waterfall is where you set a budget in advance. So the budget is set, it's hopefully locked. Then we make a plan that meets the budget. Then we analyze the plan. Does it look like it'll meet the budget? Then we begin executing and we test at the end to verify, did we hit the budget? This approach has many values. It's easier to manage because once the budget has been set, you simply measure, are we on track or off track to meet that budget? It has advantages in that it's more relaxing, especially in the beginning. People are doing planning first, and you're doing risk mitigation assessments first. At the end, it is higher stress because all the testing is at the end, and that's when you know if you've made the budget or not. So the end is higher stress. but an advantage is the beginning is less stressful. In exchange, what it is less good at doing is innovating, because by setting the budget in the beginning, you have constrained innovation. If at any point during development, there's a disruptive new scenario, something changes in the global economy, or your engineers learn something, you cannot incorporate that learning without resetting the budget, which is considered a failure for a waterfall project. So the downside is innovation is more slow. I'd like to give some examples. I've chosen examples from the public news. Leadership in most companies means dictating budgets years in advance. That is normal globally. For example, General Motors. General Motors commits to $400 million US new Canadian battery materials plant for Ultium platform. I replied, waterfall companies announce funding releases years in advance. This locks up funding, requiring delegation and politicking over months to adapt financial commitments to changing environments like the ongoing chip shortage. General Motors and most car companies are currently having a problem. They don't have enough silicon, they don't have enough chips to adjust the electric seats or to run the displays in the car, etc. And they're not able to make as many cars. Interestingly, Tesla has the same supply chain, but has made more cars because Tesla doesn't lock in a budget years in advance, so they can change suppliers daily. Thank you. Okay, next example, Porsche. Porsche Taycan production temporarily halted over Ukraine crisis. I wrote, the war in Ukraine was not predicted in the 9-year budget for Volkswagen Group. Volkswagen Group operates on a 9-year budget. And if you want to spend more than 3 million euros in Volkswagen Group, you need board approval. So you need to wait till the next board meeting. So if your wiring harness supplier is in the Ukraine and is currently shut down because there's a war, you need to spend more than 3 million euro to either start making your own wiring harnesses or start up another supplier. That means you have to wait until the next board meeting. And the board of Volkswagen is 40% majority controlled by the Pierce family. Some people call that the Porsche family. That means if they don't like your proposal, if they think there might be a better one, you don't get approved. They have majority voting rights. What that means is you need to spend the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months making a presentation that you think is convincing to the Porsche family, Pierce family, instead of fixing the problem. Next, Honda, Sony agreed to electric vehicle development partnership, first deliveries in 2025. The problem here is you have leadership that's not doing the engineering, that is dictating budget, in this case, 3 years in advance. They're saying, engineers, this is what you need to be doing 1, 2, and 3 years from now. Anything you learn in between now and then, engineers, we want you to ignore it so you can meet this commandment from our leadership group. This is the downside to agility. It prevents many types of innovation. Now, again, there are good things to waterfall. You can collaborate with the government more easily, because if you've said, here's how we're going to spend money the next 9 years, that lasts for an entire government electoral cycle in many governments. The government knows how to support you. There are many advantages to waterfall, but innovation is not one of them. Okay, let's move up. What's the gateway to agility? What's more innovative than waterfall? The gateway to agility is something called Scrum. Scrum attempts to move us from a 1-year or longer budget to monthly budgets. These are called sprints. A sprint is a miniature waterfall project. Scrum and waterfall are actually very similar. Scrum has short waterfalls called sprints. They're exactly like a waterfall. They start with planning. They have variance meetings every day called a daily scrum. Are we varying from the plan? They have test and review at the end, and then a post-mortem. or inspect and adapt cycle. It's exactly a small waterfall. Scrum has a really smart mechanism that increases agility over time. It's called the developer role. In Scrum, if you're a designer, a tester, a CAD engineer, a procurement official, a manager, you have the same title in Scrum. You're called a developer. What that does is it starts to create an organization that feels more flat. So you have testers that are interested in learning how to do some procurement, and you have procurement people who are interested in learning how to do some robotics programming or general assembly. You also have a Scrum Master role that's sort of like a lean expert, and you have a product owner who's essentially your funding proxy. The product owner determines budget for the sprint. And this is the good trick of Scrum, to move from an annual budget to a monthly budget. The product owner takes the annual budget and splits it into 12 or more funding increments called sprints. And they do that through something called a product backlog. So Scrum in itself is actually not very agile. It's a mini waterfall, but it's super good because its developer role and its splitting of a larger funding budget into smaller chunks moves us towards agile. Here might be the more interesting part. Advanced agile companies like Tesla do not use the Scrum roles anymore. Product owner, Scrum Master, developer. Instead, the teams self-organize around projects and share the responsibilities. Governments require some roles like health and safety officer and plant manager. Tesla employees rotate through who is playing these roles, sometimes changing more than once in a week or even in a day. Anyone can play these roles if they have completed the training. The training is provided by apps on everyone's phones. This keeps the company feeling flat, where anyone feels they can do anything. Employees are measured automatically by software called digital self-management. There are no performance reviews or promotions. Employees make more money from stock options. Many employees have more than $1 million US and continue to work at the company because they enjoy the work and are passionate about the company mission. I had more than $1 million before I even joined Tesla. And a lot of the people I worked with already did too. So it becomes about the mission and not the money because the stock performs so well. Advanced agile companies like Tesla do not use the 5 events of Scrum, that mini waterfall where you plan the sprint, inspect and adapt on the way, have a customer review, and then your postmortem, your retrospective. Instead, the employees and artificial intelligence software propose new goals each day. Employees then use the law of 2 feet to walk to any project and join. The law of 2 feet says that you should use your own 2 feet to walk to whichever project you can add the most value. You might stay working on the same project for days or even years, but you could walk to another project at any time without being told to do it. The Agile boards at Tesla are automated by software. It is like a digital Scrum Master creating the board for you. The product owner functions are also mostly software. In this way, nearly 100% of the employees are developers for hardware and software. There are more than 100,000 employees in Tesla now. This is the business case for Tesla. Most companies around the world are about 60% management. And what that means is about 60% of all headcount, all staff, is not directly building or innovating the product. They're having meetings about the product. They're making decisions about the product. Now, it's actually a little worse than that, because that 60% of headcount actually gets more than the majority of the salary. They tend to be the higher paid portion of the company. So now approximately 80% of the company's budget is not directly producing or improving the goods. It's actually even a little worse than that, because these managers have decision-making authority. So the people doing the work, the engineers, the logistics professionals, the procurement officials, they have to wait on leadership to make decisions. So there's actually a slowdown effect. What that means is most companies around the world are operating at less than 20% efficiency. Tesla has nearly 100% efficiency. That sounds absurd. But when you think about the value, the market capital value of Tesla is greater than all other car companies on planet Earth added together, you realize something different is happening here. And it's this. It's that nearly 100% of the staff is doing the work. Here's a picture of me working at Tesla. I'm operating Agile at Tesla. This is as close to a thought leader position as you can have. And also, I'm loading 20-kilogram weights of materials into robots. I'm also drilling metal. I'm sweeping up floors and cleaning spills. And so is Elon Musk. The wealthiest person in the world, Elon Musk, is not wearing Gucci belts or Dior shoes. Elon Musk is wearing the same type of clothes I'm wearing. Black work jeans, a Tesla t-shirt, a hard hat, glasses, and work boots. Cheap ones, like, well, relatively, like $20 work boots. And Elon is drilling metal, programming, sweeping floors with everybody else. And that's all Elon's doing. Elon doesn't have meetings. I never saw a single meeting while I was in Tesla. I did not even see one happening. And there was definitely not one that I ever saw on Elon's agenda or anyone's agenda. They just do the work. If you want to talk to them, you have to join the work. The company is nearly 100% developing hardware and software. And this is the dramatically different financial efficiency of a company like this. What about the outputs? In Scrum, we have a product backlog that are the business goals, and a sprint backlog, which is the technical to-do plan. What are we technically going to do? And then we have the product increment, the thing we give the customer. In Tesla's case, a car or solar roof or battery pack. Tesla does not use product backlogs or divide work into sprints. Tesla focuses on automating safety, quality, and certification tests. Then employees mob or do group work to improve the products with real-time feedback from the automated tests. This is important. If your certification cycle takes 2 years, you cannot introduce new product faster than every 2 years. You can't introduce new product faster than it's certified. So that means your shortest sprint length, your shortest new product introduction cycle is at least 2 years. So what Tesla did first is they shortened the certification cycle by progressively adding automated robotic testing. Until now, every car is certified individually. Most companies don't work this way. They have what's called a model cycle, which is typically 5 to 7 years long, with a minor model change cycle in between. The companies apply for certification every 5 to 7 years for their new model. That means they can't introduce a substantial change until the next certification cycle. So if an engineer has an idea to dramatically improve the safety of the car, they can't. They have to wait until the next certification cycle. Because remember, these companies made waterfall budgets. And if the company, Daimler, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, if they went through certification again, it would be a budget overrun. It would be higher than the initial budget because the company budgeted for only one test and certification cycle. Tesla instead certifies each car individually. And they've been doing this for 12 years now. So now the government organizations are used to it. Maybe they even like it, but they're at least used to it. So each car is certified. What that means is you can introduce change at any time. So in theory, every single Tesla could be unique. And they almost are. There are more than 20 changes in production, in hardware, in software, in electronics, in airbags, every week, which is the next part. Tesla does not estimate dates. Instead, trend lines from each project show a trend to when hundreds of teams will each complete their own small projects. A small project includes testing and updating production. So you don't have design teams. If your team designs something, they also put it into production. They carry it through. In this way, each Tesla car in production changes more than 20 times a week. For example, the headlights, taillights, and charge port of the Model S and X products were changed in 2 days. Electronics, software, metal parts, airbags, seat cushions, even large metal parts are introduced continuously in production every day and sold to the customers. This is possible because of extensive automated testing that runs on every single car to ensure safety and legal compliance. That's Scrum. Scrum moved many companies towards agility. Well, what's agility then? If Scrum is the gateway to agility, what is agility? Agile companies value discovered opportunities, even late in development. Less takes longer. You need to iterate to simplify something. You start with a complicated product that works, and then you iterate to simplify. If the path before you is clear, you're probably on someone else's. The idea here is if you can set a budget a year in advance, you're following somebody. You're not doing disruptive innovation by definition. Disruptive innovation is discovered as you go at any time. So you need to have real-time budgeting as opposed to predictive budgeting, waterfall budgeting. They want you to do what works for them. But what if you want to do something different? To reach your goals, only listen to people who achieved what you want to achieve. So if you're listening to a Waterfall Business School podcast, or reading a waterfall book on predictive budgeting, or winning in the investment markets with waterfall companies, you're not going to get the Musk companies. You're not going to get that rate of innovation. If you want to innovate as quickly as the Musk companies do, the only companies you could look to are the Musk companies. Agile companies increase psychological safety, which increases rate of learning. Here's what I mean. How much we learn when we fear mistakes, when we're comfortable with mistakes. This is Google's primary measurement for high-performing teams. How comfortable do people feel saying they don't feel well, they feel tired, they didn't sleep last night, they were taking care of a sick pet? How comfortable do junior employees feel telling a senior employee, I don't think this is a good idea? This is called psychological safety, and it directly impacts speed of learning. And if you're trying to be an innovative company like Google is, this is your number one metric. And this is the metric Google uses to measure their high-performing teams, psychological safety. How comfortable do people feel being honest, even if the news is not good? And that's related how we're taught to measure success, salary, job title, or maybe a better scale, mental health, job title, salary, free time, liking what you do, physical health. And then this takes us to Agile at Tesla. If hard work only made you rich, everyone with a 9-to-5 job would be a billionaire. So if it's not only hard work, what is it? Speed of innovation matters more than hard work. The Musk company's philosophy is pace of innovation is the only thing that matters in the long run. So the Musk companies don't actually manage to increase psychological safety. That's not their goal. But they love psychological safety because it increases speed of innovation because people learn faster. So if your goal is psychological safety, you might have a wonderful, good feeling organization that may or may not be successful. If your goal is pace of innovation is the only thing that matters in the long run, that will also bring in psychological safety and many very good agile practices for the purpose of increasing pace of innovation. Next up, 12 superchargers for Teslas. Those are their charging stations, deployed in 8 days in Florida in the United States. Now, Tesla was waiting on the government for a year for permission to build these charging stations, these superchargers. And the Florida government finally gave the permission. It took them a year. The day the permission came, Tesla started building the charging stations, and they were done in 8 days. What this means is you don't always control every constraint. And you can't budget for when the government is going to be done, because you don't know when the government is going to be done. You couldn't say in Q1 of 2022, we're going to use the budget for these superchargers, because you have no idea when the government is going to approve your permit. Instead, the day the permit is approved, you spend the money, you execute. So you have agile budgeting, real-time budgeting. You can't do predictive finance. And then you have fast rollout. Speed of innovation is the only thing that matters in the long run. Next, Elon Musk tweeted, "I'm driving this program personally," this being the Tesla bot, the humanoid working robot, "as is the case for almost all new programs." And I replied, "Product owner, chief engineer." Join the mob. Here is how Elon works. If there was one thing I learned working from Elon Musk, if I could choose only one, it'd be this. Elon does not attend meetings. You could not make a presentation to give to Elon. There'd be nowhere to give it to Elon. He's not sitting down anywhere. You couldn't do that. Instead, what Elon does is try to find out where is the bottleneck, where is the choke point, where's the limiting point. He tries to find that out. Wherever that is, he goes there physically. He uses the law of 2 feet. He goes there and he joins the work. It doesn't mean he knows how to do the work. And it doesn't mean he's the best. Elon is a very clever person, but I don't think he's a superhuman. He's not the best at everything, but he joins the work and tries. And how this works, the technique called mob, is there are 7-minute turns. So Elon will try to program the robot or adjust the paint mix or talk to the supplier about the chemical problem for 7 minutes, while everyone else, usually 3, 4, or 5 people, gives advice. Then the timer goes off and the next person does it for 7 minutes while everyone gives advice. It's the fastest way to learn, because you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 coaches and everyone is reinforcing each other's knowledge. It also has almost 0 defect rate because you have everyone else checking you. It's also very tiring. It's very intense, but it's an extremely fast way to learn. You're never waiting on anything. So Elon joins the mob. Elon has often been called a genius for comments like this. "I'm a fan of Rust." Rust is a software platform. "Clearly scales well, given that Discord uses it. For maximum performance, however, nothing beats Type C, a programming language, with a customized compiler on specialized hardware. Important for max frame rate on vehicle inference computer. Otherwise, we mostly use C++ and Python, 2 other programming languages. Most CEOs don't talk at this technical level. Most CEOs are seeing reports of what the issue was 3 months ago and making a budget decision based on the reports." The reason Elon Musk is so effective as a leader is because Elon joins the mobs. Mob work creates deep technical understanding. There is likely no other way to have this level of deep technical understanding. Next up, Elon Musk's advice on how to learn anything from an old Reddit Ask Me Anything. I do kind of feel like my head is full. My context switching penalty is high and my process isolation is not what it used to be. Frankly, though, I think most people can learn a lot more than they think they can. They sell themselves short without trying. One bit of advice: it is important to view knowledge as a sort of semantic tree, knowledge tree. Make sure you understand the fundamental principles, the trunk, and then the branches, before you get into the leaves details, where there's nothing to hang them onto. Organize your understanding and you can become cross-functional. Cross-functional means you're good at more than one thing. You're not just a procurement official anymore. You're not just a software developer anymore. You're not just a mechanical engineer anymore. You're not just a designer. You actually can do all of those things. But you would join mobs of each of those disciplines to build the core skills and form a trunk that then branches out into designer. And your trunk is employee or business owner or entrepreneur. That's your trunk, like skills of the world. And then it branches into things like Adobe Illustrator, Corel Draw, Dassault CAD products, AutoBidder, procurement products, agile procurement, like you form your branches and leaves. Then the duty of a leader is to serve their people, not for the people to serve them. Cross-functional execution means you can actually engineer solutions for the people, not just talk about it. And execution increases your sphere of influence. Yes, you can get a seat at the table. You can get into some important conversations just by asking or by being charismatic or dressing really well or smiling. You can, that's true. But you can get into even more conversations with even more leverage if you execute, if you actually deliver. This is the highest leverage power play on planet Earth with the human species, and maybe robots too, executing. And that then takes us to a note from me from a very large car company that asked, how do we try to catch up to Tesla? And I said, transform your company to be more like Tesla within your sphere of influence. I will recommend a digital self-management software project delivering in 30-day increments or less, and venture accounting or real-time accounting with no estimates for the new Agile group, with clear interfaces to suppliers as the primary architecture in accordance with Justice's law. Now, Justice's law and modular architecture is a larger topic. If you wanted to go deep on that, it's chapter 10 of my book. You're more than invited. Or if you wanted to talk about that, we could for the remainder of the time. But in any case, that's in the book. And the final summary of all of this is join the mob again for the next bottleneck and simply never stop. And when that happens, your company value becomes worth more than every competitor combined. This is an excerpt of my Agile Hardware developer course. However, maybe it's the most useful part to start the conversation. With that, I'd love to hear what comments or questions are from the room. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joe. We have quite a few questions on Slido.
Yes. What software is used to automate the Agile boards? It is made in-house. It is custom software. But that said, I'll say you could start with Post-it notes or virtual Post-it notes and get some of the same effect. But the Tesla software now has a lot of machine learning in it, and that's in-house. So it's a lot of Python.
So you mean that you innovated even in your own tooling? You created your own tool so that you didn't use anything from the market?
There is some market bought tooling. There is, but
Okay.
the Agile boards is in-house. And actually the majority is in-house, but there is some market purchase tooling. For example, you don't have to fill in any timesheets at Tesla, what you spend your time doing. That piece of software is bought. It's a vended piece of software called Workday.
Oh yeah, we're partner with them. We know them.
Yeah, so there's some just purchased software, but more than half, I will guess, is made in-house.
Oh, pretty good ratio.
How come Elon Musk did not have meetings? Seems like meetings are crazier since COVID. Yeah, right. Elon might actually want to have meetings if Elon felt Elon had time. but always there's a bottleneck somewhere, right? Like the permit isn't approved for this charging station, or the concrete trucks haven't arrived in Texas. So Musk will go to wherever the bottleneck is to try to solve that problem. And that's, to Musk, more important than having a meeting about it. So I'd say the reason Musk seems to not have meetings is because of a sense of urgency. Did Tesla build their own training apps? Yes, but they're super simple. The training apps are awesomely simple. They're basically apps that play YouTube videos. And the YouTube videos are other Tesla employees that with their phone said, here's how you do this. And you go in the app and you play the video, and it's just another employee, like someone you might have worked with earlier. And they're like, here's how you do this. And then when you're done, you like check off, I understand, and you're trained. So they are the simplest type of training apps, but they are made in-house, yes. You mentioned Tesla test certify each car individually, but they can do 20 or more changes at one time. So they take feedback and implement in the same model? Yes. Yes. Now, a lot of what speeds that up is the analytics that come back from each car, the data that comes back from each car. Tesla, there's 2 million Teslas on the road now. Every single one has what's called a digital twin. It's a 3D model, every single one. There's more than 2 million of these 3D models. And it says what they think the tire wear is, what they think, what kind of tires are on the car, because people can change the tires after they buy the car. Do they think the car has ever been in an accident? How fast is the car driving right now? When the car is being driven fast, what kind of music is the driver listening to? Which of the 3 usual drivers is it? The tall one, the short one? Now, there's no way to map it to a human. When I was in Tesla, I could not see who was in a car or who owned the car, but I could see a 3D model of every car and its estimated wear and how they're usually driven, how many people are usually in the car in the morning, how many people are usually in the car in the evening. So you have this huge amount of analytics, which aids in decision-making. But it is all anonymous. I could not find out whose car it was. They did not estimate with dates, but with trend line. And my organization focuses more on delivery with dates. What is the right balance? Most companies, at least somewhere in the past, had waterfall budgeting training, which again is not bad. The innovation speed is not as fast, but there are other advantages. For example, it's easier to work with other slow groups, which is sometimes a good thing. Governments tend to be very slow. It's easier to collaborate with governments when you're a waterfall organization, when you have a 9-year budget. The governments feel comfortable around you. They know what you're spending the majority of your money on. So waterfall is not all evil, but innovation is slower. Okay. So most of us at some point in time were taught annual budgeting or even longer, 3-year budgeting, 5-year budgeting. And that then creates a focus on dates to match budgets. So there is a fundamental mental switch when you move to real-time budgeting. And that switch does enable a much faster pace of innovation and a much faster response rate, but it is a different budgeting cycle. Until your organization is doing budgeting in 30-day chunks or less, so Scrum, there probably will be a big focus on dates. There probably should be. If your company moves to less than 30-day budget allocations, dates start to become unimportant. And the conversation will naturally shift away from dates and start to shift towards no estimates. How did I get to the question? I see we're checking these off, which is great because there's a lot, but also I'd love feedback from the people who asked. Did I misunderstand the question or the comment? Maybe okay. How would you rate Musk's people skills? Much higher now, but Musk is really cold. I mean, Musk is thinking about how to transport human consciousness out among the stars. And if you've ever talked to someone that looks like they're looking into the future, they're like not really talking to you, right? And that is pretty low on people skills. That is Elon Musk most of the time. So that said, Elon is funny, and that helps a lot. And from talking to people that collaborated with Musk a long time ago, it sounds like Musk is much better at pretending to be a human now. As Musk says, being a human in simulation mode.
Just as a follow-up to that one, do people enjoy working with him? It seems so from your description, but I would just want to double check whether everybody that works with him enjoys the experience.
When you're working in a Musk company, you are a bullet. And Musk and you will help point yourself at a problem and you shoot yourself at it.
Okay.
And that is what you are. And it's really enjoyable in that you feel incredibly effective. I imagine, I've never been an Olympic athlete, but I imagine it feels a lot like an Olympic athlete feels when they're really at the top of their game, when they're at their best, they're having the most impact. And that is a really good feeling. And it creates energy. The amount of work I was able to do there, and talking to other employees were able to do there, is the highest in their careers sustainably, because it's so invigorating. But if you're trying to go somewhere to get affirmation, I like affirmations. That's part of a collaborative style I like. I like people to say, Joe, you did a great job, and smile at me. You're not going to get that. You're not. I mean, you're a bullet. So you don't like say, thank you, bullet. You say, we hit the target. Well, what's the next target? I mean, it's over already. You hit the target.
You just
You're
move
not
on.
talking about the bullet. You're talking about the next target now. So, I mean, there's very little celebration, and that is devastating. But you feel at the top of your game.
The celebrate success part doesn't really happen. You just get a more challenging target and on to the next.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now that said, I'm not in the Musk companies anymore. I'm hearing that's improving. That's continuing to improve. So bit by bit, we'll see. Yeah. If you tell that Elon is running around and looking where the bottleneck is, isn't that typical for micromanagement? Different, only because Elon doesn't tell anybody what to do. Elon looks for the bottleneck to join the mob. So this is the idea of a servant leader, someone who looks to where the problem is and runs up to help, versus someone who runs up and says, work hard at that, and then walks away, right? Which is not what you want. But Elon absolutely does sweat the details. Many Agilists will recommend leaders to stay out of the way and not micromanage. And that's good advice. But even better is join the engineers and do the work. That's even better. The worst is tell the engineers what to do and then don't help. That's micromanagement. What are the downsides of working in this way at Tesla? Do people burn out? Much less now. So now the work week is you work 3 days a week and then you have 4 days off. And then the next week you work 4 days a week and you have 3 days off, and that alternates. So now burnout is much lower. You can have a family, you can learn an instrument, you can play sports. It all fits while you're working in the Musk companies. So that works out. Now, some people choose not to have a family and not play sports, and they play Tesla. Like that's their sport, that's their family. And they will then choose to work all 7 days. You can do that. And if that's the only thing you do, they don't seem to burn out. Some people have been doing that for 10 years or more. But if you're trying to be involved in your kid's school, or if you're trying to also go to school or something like that, then yeah, you would take the 3 days off 1 week and the 4 days off the next week. So burnout is much lower now than it was. In the beginning, everyone was expected to work 7 days a week. And yeah, it was a burnout factory. Very few people could do that. They would have to prioritize nothing else. But now it's 3 days on, 4 days off, then 4 days on, 3 days off.
So just to follow up on that, I heard you say you take 4 days off, you work 4 days, take 3 days off. Those 3 days include Saturday and Sunday.
It moves because other people need the chance to have the weekend as well. So some days it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off. So it's not always the weekend. It moves.
So initially, everybody was working 7 days a week.
Oh, yeah, like back in 2010.
Okay.
Yeah. But in recent history, the last few years, yeah, it's 4 days on, 3 days off, then 3 days on, 4 days off. There's 5 groups, I guess you could call them shifts, for all the Musk activities, and they alternate. So you do get a weekend every other weekend, but your days off are on the other days. So they'll have a 4-day weekend and you'll work their weekend. The next week, you'll have a 4-day weekend and they work your weekend, right? And you shift.
So Joe, we have around 10 minutes left. So everyone, if we have lots of questions, so if you go on Slido and you can like the message you'd like to be answered first, and we can go through that.
Oh, thank you, Danisha. Thank you.
Yeah.
How does Tesla make sure that the right people are being recruited? Innovation will innovate. Whoa, where did it go?
Second
Okay.
one.
Oh, it got voted down. Okay, well, innovation will probably require people or team with growth mindset. Yes, yes, yes. So the way hiring works is someone applies. For example, I responded to a job posting. I applied. The person who wrote the job posting calls me back. So if you write a job posting, you call back the candidates that you're interested in. So you are the recruiter because you posted the job posting, and anyone can post a job posting. So you call them back. So I talked to the person who posted the job posting. Then if they like you, they hire you. They can choose to meet you in person if you want, but I got hired during COVID, so it was all over the phone. Then you go through orientation, and your first 90 days, they're linked to you in the apps on your phone. And it doesn't mean they manage you, and it doesn't mean they own you. What it does mean is you can like quickly see them and they can quickly see you in the apps on your phone, but that's really about it. And at the end of 90 days, they get cash back. They get a bonus if they recruited someone that was effective for 90 or more days. The more important part of that question is about growth mindset, and I completely agree. Now, interestingly, on the phone, I was not asked about growth mindset. I was asked about flexibility, and I was asked about my willingness to do whatever it took. Joe, are you going to drill metal? If a robot is jammed, are you going to get it unjammed? Or you want to sit in some pretty office somewhere? So I was asked about that. And then, so there's that check, are you going to work? And then they're like, are you physically healthy? Like, can you lift 20 kilograms all day? Like that was important. And then they asked me about, cool Agile stuff. And the reason I think growth mindset wasn't the primary line of questioning, because it's so important, is now there's more than 100,000 people doing this. So the culture is overwhelming. It's not a company in transition. It's a company that's transitioned. So if you join and everyone around you is exhibiting growth mindset, you don't have to be coached or trained in it anymore. You'll either self-select out in less than 90 days, or you'll do it. And what I found amazing is many employees that previously had been at very waterfall companies for years and did not have a growth mindset, did join Tesla. And when you're surrounded by people acting this way, suddenly you can do it. And yeah, I'd say I think anyone can do this, actually. But part of the reason why is there's already a large group with growth mindset. I think it's a different question when a company's a startup and has less than 100 employees or less than Dunbar's number. And that's where I think you might need coaches, training, company events, reinforcements. But if you have more than Dunbar's number doing this, or you've already crossed the chasm, more than 20% of total headcount doing this, I believe it catches itself. What agile delivery framework is Tesla using? Can you please explain this? And could banks and insurance companies adopt it? One, banks and insurance companies could adopt it. Tesla has their own. It is the most agile thing I've ever seen on planet Earth. SpaceX operates the same way. It does not have a name. I will call it the Musk model. In Tesla, it's not named. It's simply the way we work. Like that, there is not a name for it. Yes, I know insurance companies can, because now there's Tesla Insurance. and they're growing market share very quickly. And I think banks can, because PayPal used to run kind of like this when Musk was running PayPal, and PayPal is similar to a bank. And now Musk is involved in Doge, and the Doge community is being run more like this. And Doge is not a bank, it's a currency, but it has some of the same outlets as a bank. So yes, it's not an existing framework. What I will say is, if a company takes more than 1 year to go from funding a project to the customers using the results, so from the whole project lifecycle, if that takes more than a year, you probably do want to use scaled agile framework. That's an agile framework. It's a slow one, but it's good at moving companies from an annual budgeting cycle to once a quarter budgeting cycle. Then you probably want to use Scrum and throw the scaled agile framework away, because the scaled agile framework doesn't let you get faster than once a quarter. Then you probably want to use Scrum, only Scrum. And that should get you to once a month budgeting. By the time you pass once a month budgeting, you likely want to just be using Kanban and Kanbans of Kanbans. And when you get under a day, you're probably getting very close to what the Musk model is. I probably should write a book on what it is. I had to go into the Musk companies to find out what it was, and not everyone has access to that or is willing to do that. So I should probably write a book on it. But this presentation is part of that. Why have you stopped working for Musk? Is it too tiring? There's the real reason, and then the reason I like to say, and they're both true. The real reason is, when I joined Tesla, I had more than 1,000 shares of Tesla stock already, because I was following the company so closely. I believed they were the future, and I had already done well in my career. I had money, and I'd put it into Tesla stock, and that was a lot of Tesla stock, 1,000 shares. And just before, when I got the job offer back from Tesla, I said to myself, I'm about to go in the company and see what it is, whether it's good or it's bad. I think the company's great, but I've not been in it. So ethically, my ethics, I said I should sell all my shares before I join. That way I can see the company for what it is, not just for trying to make me rich. So I sold all my shares and I signed the job offer. The next week, so as soon as I became an employee, I entered what's called a blackout period. I couldn't buy or sell stock for like 30 days. The next week, Tesla stock price started to ramp, and the 5-to-1 stock split happened. I would have made $5 million in a month. And I hated that. I hated that I was so passionate about the company and trying to do the right thing that I missed a huge amount of money. I mean, I still had plenty of money. I still had more than $1 million worth of Tesla stock when I bought back in later, once I could buy back in. It still worked out fine, but I did miss a huge amount of money. And it's not like Elon Musk walks over to you and pats your shoulder and says, you really sold at the wrong time, here's some money, right? It's not like that. Like, you are responsible for yourself. And I realized I had enough shares, I could make more money outside the company than I could inside the company, which is pretty broken, but that's what happened. And I said, I should really quit and just hold my stock. Then the second thing, the reason I like to say, which is also real, is why did I leave the date I did? My son was turning 4 years old, and it was not on my 4-day off or my 3-day off. It was on my days on. And I said, I want to go take my son camping. And I talked to all the teams I was working with, and they all said, it's okay, it's totally fine. But California labor law does require a schedule of who is in the factory on what dates. That's not a Tesla thing. That's a California labor law thing. And at that time, Tesla's headquarters was in California in the United States. We call it the mothership. And California labor law says, no, Joe, you're already on the schedule. You cannot leave on these dates. And I said, okay, this is the date I'll resign then. I'll resign just before my son's birthday. And I went and I took him camping and it was awesome. So the reason I left was because of stock and the date I left was because of my son's birthday. But is it too tiring? I'll say, if you've got to rest on your days off, and that's tough because your family or friends or commitments, you think, oh, I've got 4 days off. I can like try to learn piano for 4 days. Well, you need to spend some of that time just sleeping, right? Because it is intense. It is, I've not been a professional athlete, but I believe this is actually really similar. You have game day and you have not game day, and on not game day, you need to spend part of it icing. And I wasn't so hurt I needed to ice, but I needed to sleep more. So part of it is, yeah, I don't think I was sleeping enough because on my days off, I wanted to like go camping and go explore Yosemite and all these cool things. Well, yeah, I think you can do that on 2 of your 4 days off or 1 of your 3 days off. But the other days, you probably need to be like sleeping. So yeah, it is tiring too. Can 100% Agile really applicable in the services industry when innovation can be stalled by lots of regulations? You can't innovate faster than your regulatory process. So what Tesla did do is they took a regulatory process that is typically about a year long process to approve an automobile. And they agiled that. And they got that down to less than a day and eventually down to a few seconds. The approval of 1 car at a time, down to a very short amount of time. And that is the bottleneck. You cannot introduce new product faster than it's legally approved and safe. So your first major Agile project is attempting to reduce at any meaningful way the regulatory approval process. And Agile can be applied to attempt to reduce the regulatory approval process length, not quality. You want regulatory approval. That's a good thing. You want to pass it a little bit faster if you can, and then a little bit faster. So yes, I believe 100% Agile can really be applicable to the services industry. For example, Tesla Insurance. What about Kanban? Are you a proponent of this? Absolutely. The Musk companies have gone past Kanban. I didn't show that part of the information. I guess you could read the book, or if you wanted, you could join the Agile Hardware Developer course. But I think Kanban is awesome. If you're releasing from budget to in the customer's hands in less than a month, you probably should be doing Kanban until you get to the Musk method. But the Musk method, I'll say, is even more aggressive than Kanban. But I'm a huge fan of Kanban. If there's so many deployments and changes in each car, how do you go about maintenance? Yeah, there's like 1,000 versions of the heat pump, right? So how could a maintenance tech be trained on 1,000 versions of the heat pump? They're not. The heat pump, for example, like all the parts of the car, are inside what's basically like a Lego brick, a Lego piece. And the maintenance techs are trained on how to pull out that Lego piece and put the new one in less than 5 minutes. That's their job. So a maintenance tech arrives and they've got one or a few of all the major modules of the car. And if they detect your heat pump has a problem, they don't try to fix your heat pump. They pop it out and pop a new one in. So you get an upgrade. You get the most recent heat pump. They don't stockpile old heat pumps. And the technician then brings your failed heat pump back to the factory where it's analyzed.
Joe, sorry to disturb. Being mindful of time, maybe you can take a last question, or if you want to talk a bit about your training, maybe you can go ahead.
You're very kind. You're very kind. What I'll do in the Zoom chat, if people don't mind, is I'll put my Twitter. And I'll say, if anyone wants to tweet any of these questions and tag Agile Mauritius and at me, I'll answer it. And that way Agile Mauritius gets more mentions and your question gets answered. And I might not be the only one that answers. You might get better answers than mine out from the Twitterverse. So totally, for sure. You can also, oh, awesome. I see Agile Mauritius on LinkedIn. Yeah, you can tag me on LinkedIn too. Here, I'll quickly put my social media contacts in and we can do follow up that way if anybody wants to. Thank you very, 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 very much, Agile Mauritius. It's my honor and privilege and pleasure to be a part of this event. I hope there was something useful to you and maybe even something inspiring.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much for this wonderful talk and answering the questions. And thank you everyone for being with us today. And as a reminder, please feel free to follow us on our various channels and provide us your feedback. And the details have already been posted in the chat window. And we definitely appreciate to get your feedback on how the session was and what you'd like to hear from us later on. So stay tuned and see you for our next sessions. Wish you all a very nice day or nice evening to some of you, and be blessed. Thanks. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Akhtar. Thank you, Harold. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Roy. Thank you, Darnisha. Thank you so much, the Agile Mauritius team. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.